and welcome to this lesson. Today I'm going to be trying to quickly go over how to break up a problem, pseudocode it out, comment it out within your program, and solve it. So here we are dealing with a problem called two-sum. It's a very popular and notorious problem on LeetCode. So we'll read through it once, then we will read through it and break it up, and then we will take what we broke up and we will comment it out. So, commenting out is different in some languages, but in Java, which is what we are going to be using today to solve this problem, you're going to want to do two forward slashes, and then you can comment out what you're trying to say. The program will understand that you were just trying to put text here, and this isn't a line of code that it should be interpreting. So yeah. So the problem is, given an array of integers nums and a integer target, return indices of the two numbers such that they add up to target. You may assume that each input would have exactly one solution, and you may not use the same element twice. You can return the answer in any order. So let's break that down. So given an array of integer nums and an integer target. So because I am using my own IDE and not LeetCode, we're going to have to define those on our own, which is fine. It is just more practice. So normally it would be given an array and a target value, both integers. And then it says to return indices of two numbers, which would be the two numbers in the array of integers, nums, such that they add up to the target value. So we're going to want a if condition to see if two numbers add up to the target. We have constraints. You may assume that each input would have exactly one solution. So if there are more solutions than one, it doesn't really matter. The first one we come across, we are going to want to return that. And also you cannot use the same element twice, which is pretty straightforward, knowing that we're going to return two numbers. So say if the target is 8 and index 2 is 4, we cannot return index 2 twice. That equals 8. So let's get started with pseudocoding. So it wants us to return. So we need a function here. So we're going to want to call to the function that we are going to create. And what we're going to want to do is the function that we want is going to return an array. So we're going to make a new array and we're going to put the indices of the two numbers into that array. I'll explain it further later, but that is going to be the best way to approach a problem like this, because if we want to return two numbers, it's much easier to put those two numbers into an array of its own. So we're going to want to call to the function and set the return value to an empty array. Okay. Then we want to print the result. So when we want to print this result, you can see I imported this Java utility pack for arrays. This will make it so that we can actually print an array, because in Java you cannot directly print an array. So this way we can turn the array into a string and print that. So now, outside of the main function, because it's a function in its own, so you want to make a function outside of that, but within the class, we are going to want to make public static int. This is an int array that we're going to be returning. That's our return type here. And we'll call it twosome. We have no parameters on this, which is inside here. If we want to pass some type of value into this function from up here, if we wanted to call this function and pass values, we'd put that in here. So we're going to want to comment out what we're going to be doing in here. So we need to declare the nums array and the target value, right? We went over this over here that we need to make our own. And then we want to check for two numbers in the array that add up to the target value. So how are we going to do that? There's many different ways you can approach this. I'm going to approach this as a double for loop. So we're going to stay at index 0, and we're going to step through using a different for loop to check the index 0 to the rest of the indexes, then go to index 1. So we'll just go with that. You can use a hash map. That's usually more efficient, but we'll just stick with for loops for now. So we'll say that add up to target value using a double for loop. Then return an int array of both numbers. So the two numbers that add up to target, we will be returning those in an array of itself. So we need to declare these. So we have an int array called nums. We'll give it the values of 2, 3, oh, my bad, these need to be comments. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then we will have the target, which is just an integer named target, which is going to be equal to 7. Then we want another int array. This is going to be, we need to get rid of the name. We'll give it new nums. It's going to be that. And then that's a new integer array of 2. So this is how you define an empty array in Java. And then you in here, you give it its size. If we were returning 5 numbers, we'd put 5 there, just so you know. And then I'm also going to make an array of 0. And we're going to call this failed. Just because we need a else statement of if two numbers never add up to the target, we're just going to return 0. So now we have our for loops. So for int I equals 0, if I is less than nums, which is our array length, then we want to increment I by 1. Then we have a second for loop that says int k, oh, my bad, int k is going to be equal to I plus 1. So wherever I is in the array, we're just going to want to be 1 ahead of it. And I'll explain that better later. So as long as k is also equal to less than the length of nums array, we're going to want to increment k. And then we want an if statement that if nums at index I plus nums at index k is equal to the target value, then we are going to want to make the new nums, our empty array, at the index of 0, so its first index is going to be equal to nums at I. And then new nums at index 1 is going to be equal to nums at k. Oh, my bad. And then we are just going to want to return new nums. Oh, my bad. And then right here, this is right outside of this first for loop. We're going to want to return the failed array. So if this if statement is never true, then we're just going to return 0. So up here real quick, I'm going to make a new integer array called result. Like we said, we're going to make an empty array, and that is going to be equal to the return value of twosome. So we just want to call twosome here. So what this is going to do is it's going to read through this, and it's going to say int result is equal to twosome, and so it's going to see this, and it's going to come down, it's going to run twosome, and whatever the returned result is, that's what it's going to set result to. So then we want a print statement, so system.out.print, and this is where this library is going to come in where we're going to do arrays.toString, and then we want to put in the array, which is result. So first we'll check, make sure that this is working fine. It should return the first two numbers that are added up to 7, which it did. In this array, we can see that 2 and 5 are the first two numbers following our logic of for loops that will be returned. So let's look at this function real quick. Actually, let's look at the whole program, top to bottom, and how it runs. So going down, we have our first actual executable line, which is setting result to twosome. So it's going to go down to twosome, and it's going to see and create the integer array of nums. Then it's going to create the target of 7, the new empty array of new nums that is going to hold two values, and then failed, which is just 0. We can actually see real quick if I just set all of these to 2. We should have it print off 0 because none of these two numbers are ever going to add up to 7. So it should just print off our default return statement, which is 0. Okay, we can go back. So this for loop logic is, I will get out a paint so that we can easily see this. So we have an array, and we have index. So this 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So this is our array. This 2 is at index 0. This is at index 1. This is at index 2, 3, 4, and 5. So these are the index that correlate to these numbers. So we have int I is equal to 0. And then we are checking nums at I. So if int I equals 0, then we are at this. So we are at 2, at index 2. Then we go to the next for loop, which is going to be repeated all the way till nums.length, which is starting at I plus 1, so we're starting at 1. And it's going to check 0 plus 1, and then 0 plus 2, and 0 plus 3, 4, 5. If it doesn't run into the if statement. So you can see at index 3, we're going to see that 2 plus 3 does not work, 2 plus 4 does not work, but 2 plus 5 equals 7. So after that third iteration, it would be of the second for loop, this if statement is going to be true, and therefore it is going to return new nums. So there you have it. I hope you took away something valuable from this lesson.